Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome back my bookworms. I hope you've been having amazing reads lately, and if you're new, subscribe. Let me know what you've been reading recently. And as you can see, you probably guessed, we are reading today we're reviewing a book. We've read this already. We are reviewing The Crimson Campaign by McClellan, which is the second book of the Powder Mage Trilogy. So we're almost finishing this series and then we can move on to other series, try to finish one of the other multiple series that I've started. This is a flintlock fantasy, which means guns, gunpowder, all that sort of stuff. And I would also say it's a bit of a military subgenre. So, military fantasy. This book was published in 2014, so it has completed its 10th anniversary this year. And on Goodreads, this book has over 38,000 ratings. And the score, it averages on 4.36, which is quite high, especially considering that this is the middle book of a trilogy. And usually middle books have middle book syndrome, surprising. And so for this to have quite a high score, I'm surprised about it. Got me curious before I started reading it. Now will my score match it? Let's find out. For the curious ones, this book that I have, this edition, is from the Broken Binding subscription. They do special editions with hardcovers. They have sprayed edges that look beautiful like this one. And I usually have the actual naked hardback because I love the artwork that is printed on it. As you can see, it has these men riding horses in a forest, which is part of a scene in the book itself, which is quite epic. But yeah, I think these books are just amazing. The Broken Binding has been increasing the quality with every new trilogy that they release, and it's just amazing. It is a pain for the wallets because the wallets will suffer, but it's totally worth it for a gift. Or if you're a book collector, some of these series are some of my favorites, and I'm discovering new ones like this one, which I love as well. So, good recommendation. But enough gushing about this edition, let's go into the synopsis. You know the drill. If you don't want to hear anything because this is the second book, so there might be spoilers for the first book, then you can skip to the timestamp that is floating around. Meanwhile, if you do want to listen to the book synopsis, then stick around and you'll have me just narrating the synopsis. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing amazing. You'll probably see some covers, but I'm just stalling now. Hopefully you've had enough time to click on the time that it's going, so let's go. Tomas's invasion of Kez ends in disaster when a Kez counteroffensive leaves him cut off behind enemy lines with only a fraction of his army, no supplies, and no hope of reinforcements. Drastically outnumbered and pursued by the enemy's best, he must lead his men on a reckless march through northern Kez to safety, and back over the mountains so that he can defend his country from an angry god. In Adro, Inspector Adam only wants to rescue his wife. To do so, he must track down and confront the evil Lord Vitas. He has questions for Vitas concerning his enigmatic master, but the answers might come too quickly. With Tomas and his powder cabal presumed dead, Taniel Two Shots finds himself alongside the god chef Mihaly as the last line of defense against Krazimir's advancing army. Tomas's generals bicker among themselves. The brigades lose ground every day beneath the Kez onslaught, and Krasimir wants the head of the man who shot him in the eye. Okie dokie, now that we're done with the synopsis, let's just review the scores for the first book, which was 4.2 out of 5, which was quite good for the start of a series. I thought the world building was really good. It had multiple magic systems, they all made a lot of sense, and then the rest were solid 4s with quite a bit of potential to increase to 5s, but let's see if that was realized in this book or not. Starting with plot, I was pleasantly surprised by the plot in this book. Although we still follow the same characters as in the first book, we actually have a couple more that are secondary that we also have POVs. I mean, we still had them in the first book, but in this one they have a bit more time or more pages into it. So that allowed me to be more interested in the plot overall. But on top of that, I thought it was gonna get a bit monotonous because it would just be battles and things like that. but it actually turned out not to be. Let me tell you, there is enough tension in this book to keep you reading. This book took turns I was not expecting, and even in parts where I was like, okay, this is gonna happen and that will lead to this, and with that it'll be the end of the book, I would be completely fooled, because that would happen, but that would happen halfway through the book, and then we would still have another half of the book to read, and I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen in this second half? And you might think, oh, but that might seem like the book is just too long. Maybe it could have been split into 2 sections, but actually no, I think it makes sense, because the arcs were short enough for me to feel like there is still something missing. I still want to read a bit more, but they weren't too long that I would feel like it needs to be split up. I think it was just the right amount, and it included just 2 arcs that complement each other. But I also think that is related to the writing style in itself, which I will speak later on, but for now, plot for me was a 5 out of 5. What about characters? One of my main criticisms in the first book was the choice of characters to have points of perspective, or points of view of the book. This still happens, we still have the same characters as we had in the first book. However, I feel like this time we had a bit more female influence in the book, and also different perspectives on the whole war happening. And the other thing that I enjoyed was that towards the end, it gives us some hints that there will be even more female influence in the book, which leaves me excited and hopefully makes this category be even greater than it already is. And that is because in this book, every character, I think I grew more attached to them, whereas in the first book, I felt some of them were I wasn't feeling as connected with them, but this book allowed me to feel that connection. Before, General Tamaz was my favorite, and it reminded me a lot of a character in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Not gonna say which one, but if you've read both books, you can figure out which one it is. But after reading this book, I don't know anymore which one is my favorite, because there are several characters that have good points and that I really enjoyed seeing their POVs. I think maybe amongst all of them, Paul would be a really good character to choose, because there's a lot going on there. And I feel like all the characters have gained struggles, goals, and they all feel very real, and that allows us as the reader to connect with them in that sense. So the character work has improved greatly in this book. Despite some of the flaws being present, I think they have been minimalized, and it allowed the characters to shine despite those small criticisms. So I'm gonna give character a 5 out of 5. World building is next, and I think in this book, world building was able to maintain its quality. We continue exploring the 3 magic systems with the gunpowder mages, the gifted, and the third ones that I don't remember the name that I'll put here, but in my opinion, I don't think they were explored enough. Because with the first book, we learned some of the limitations of all the magic systems, and we learned what they do. So I would have liked in this book for us to explore those limits and see what original things people come up with to try and use that magic system to their advantage. I think we do see that, but only partially, only with one of the magic systems, and not really with the other ones. And I know there's one in particular that doesn't really allow much maneuvering, but still it would be good to explore that. What I enjoyed was the new mysteries being added to these magic systems. Not all of them, but these new mysteries, at least it doesn't leave the category completely stagnant. There's some new motivations, new things for us as the reader to keep reading, keep getting excited about this world, and I think that is motivating, and that saves this category, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. As for writing style, I think the author has maintained its quality of prose, and I mean probably improved it, because the characters feel better, the plot feels better, so overall prose is probably better. Although it's nothing too drastic, it's not like the first book was bad, the first book was already quite good, and I feel like it's just improved quite a bit. But what I really want to focus for this category is the pacing. I feel like in military fantasy, it's hard to keep the pacing engaging, because you might just have the tendency of have battle after battle after battle after battle, and that becomes monotonous. The tension, even though it's there at the start, it ends up dissipating because it's always at the same level. But Brian McClellan was able to do things differently, have battles, of course, but also introduce spy arcs and mysteries and all of these things that would break the tension to introduce a new, different tension into the book so that we could actually feel motivated to keep reading and still feel that anxiety of like, oh my god, what's going to happen next to this character and to this other that is in a hard situation as well. Of course, if you don't like military fantasy, then you probably won't enjoy as much this book, but I do still think that there are good points in this book aside from the military fantasy part, like the spy arc and the mystery arc of it all. So it's still good to read in that sense, and for this category I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And finally, enjoyment. I enjoyed reading this book. I think it was fun. It was always making me read at a good pace. I didn't feel bored when I was reading it. At the same time, it wasn't one of those books where I was trying to find excuses to read. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't, oh my god, I need to talk to everyone about this. So, I mean, maybe at the end it was quite a bit like that, but not at the start. But anyways, I will give this category a 4 out of 5 because I think it deserves, and it's quite enjoyable overall. And so we reached the end of this review. Just a refresher that will show up here. We have 5 for plot, 5 for character, and then 4 for world building, 4 for writing style, 4 for enjoyment, which gives us a final score of 4.4 out of 5. So as you can see, it's again very close to the Goodreads score, which means that I think like the majority, maybe I think a bit higher with my rating system. But anyways, I think it is a very good middle book in a trilogy. It's rare to find books that are this good or that improve on the first one. So I still recommend this as a good series, and I cannot wait to read the third one, which I hope ends even better, probably with a 4.6, 4.8, if not a 5. I would love to have another 5 this year. So that's all I can say. Now I can volley back to you and ask you if you've read this book, or if you're curious to read this book, or if you have another flintlock fantasy that you recommend. Comment down below. I'm keen to hear more recommendations. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and I'll be seeing you on Thursdays and Sundays, alright? Adieu.